Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Because it's time to write now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right.
Welcome to another daily motivation stream. I'm your host, Kauffman, and today, as every other day, we are going to write now. So we're going to be doing not one, not two, but 3 writing sprints. And let's really try to make sure that we can be productive. This is my first write of the week. Personally, I'm eager to get back into Scarecrow. I have to kind of wrap my head around where was I at with the last Scarecrow. You know what it feels like when you haven't worked on your story in a few days, like because you know our weekends are always busy on the Right Now channel, and then getting back into it and you're like, all right, got to reframe my mindset, get back into the vibe of the story that I'm working on. So it's probably going to take me a couple minutes to be like, all right, reframe, Scarecrow, where was I at? I am currently with Pebble the Pixie as she is meeting the Dragonkin. That's right. Okay, so I'm gonna have to get myself into it. Why don't you come join us? Make sure to stick around for the breaks. We'll catch up, we'll chat, we'll see whatever writing shenanigans and craziness is on our minds. All right, beautiful. So I'm all set on my end. Let's see. I'm not sure which layout I like. I'm playing around between 2 different layouts for the writing sprint today. I'm like, do I like layout number 1 or layout number 2? I cannot decide. It was like 1, I get the map. 1, I'm kind of in it. Kind of going back and forth. You let me know. I was like, well, this thing could be slightly better adjusted. There we go. Okay, awesome. Well, I'll see how I feel. So as you can see, I'm all ready. We're going to do our first writing sprint, 25 minutes. So let's get into it. Let's be able to get into the vibe. Hey, what's up, Calvin, ML, and Maddie? Welcome back, my friends. Glad to have you here in the stream with me. Hopefully we're all going to be able to get some productive writing in on our stories. Ooh, Calvin, you like the one with the map, right? Is like, I kind of went back and forth on whether I wanted to have the one where I can have like the picture in the bottom. I was like, do people really care about looking at a picture? It is kind of interesting. I mean, I like looking at it. So I kind of go back and forth. I'm like, okay, this, whereas then the other one, we kind of get, let's see, let me see if I'm like going to like a writing page, how well. I mean, ultimately, I care about people seeing the writing is what's most important. So it's like there would be that as compared to, I mean, a little bigger. Not sure if it makes too much of a difference. But I mean, as we all know, maps are an absolute great addition to stories. So awesome. I'll leave that up here if you guys want to look at the map. So this is my original rough draft of the map. I'll talk about it on one of the breaks. But let's get into our first writing sprint. Let's get into the writing vibe and see what we can do. So I'm all ready, whether you are brainstorming, writing, editing, author branding, or maybe just procrastinating or hanging out. That's all part of the vibe. Come join us because it's time to write now. Writing sprint done. Writing sprint done. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Awesome. So I am so glad we were able to get a little bit of work done on that first writing sprint. I felt pretty good about that personally. And let's see. So with where I'm at with Scarecrow, I want to say, like I said, I'm about 40% of the way through the second draft. How far along are you in your work right now? I'd love to hear. I know we've seen a lot of celebration and progress in the chat so far. How far are you getting with your drafts? Drop a comment. I would love to hear. So, with Scarecrow right now, our heroes have been separated. So right now, we last had Scarecrow and his friends were Scarecrow and the Pebble were pulled over the side of the cliff, and we had the whole Scarecrow chapter. Now we're returning back to our Pebble, the Pixie, as she is plummeting through the air. And I wanted to do something really interesting. So I keep going back and forth on this doll. So Pebble has this doll that she carries with her. Now I've gone back and forth on this draft on whether I want to call it a doll or a familiar. And I haven't determined how I felt yet. I don't want it to be a character, but I want it to kind of to make the reader question Pebble's sanity. Up until this point, the Pebble is consistently grabbing and reaching for something in her pocket, and this is the first full moment. Actually, we did have a vision of it previously, but that was in a dream. So this is the first full moment in reality, in the real waking world, where Pebble is falling through the sky, and the doll or familiar is, I mean, her stuff is obviously falling with her, and she's kind of having this kind of like chaotic this breaking moment where she's plummeting to her death down the side of this canyon as the doll is falling alongside her and kind of taunting her. And really, it's really just taunting her for the most part. And I wanted it to create this really like just this really interesting dynamic on if the reader is going to question, like, okay, is this doll real? Is it not real? Because they did encounter a village of of inanimate objects and dealt with another type of doll. So it would lead the reader to believe, okay, potentially this doll could be real. But the more interesting thing is it's challenging Pebble's sanity. So I thought that would be a fun thing to do since we get our first Pebble POV. This is like the first full Pebble POV chapter, which I'm really having fun. Awesome. And it looks like you guys, we got a couple people jumped in. Lillian, welcome. Welcome, my friend. Always glad to have you in here. Hello, everyone. I've been in self-isolation trying to write in a house that's too noisy. Finally caught some quiet. Forgot that 3 p.m. Kauffman time is 2 p.m. my time. Lillian, I'm glad you were able to reach us. Yes. So for all of you who know, I post all my schedules online. And I always post in mountain time personally because that's the time zone I'm in. I never really was able to land on a time zone to post the schedules on because everyone in the community is in all 4 parts of the US time zone. We all kind of range between Pacific all the way to Mountain, Central, and Eastern. So I've just kind of stuck with mine since that's what I'm used to, but never really stuck to one. Nice, White Seer. You're like 13.5 thousand words. That is some awesome progress, my friend. I'm really, really happy for you. That's so cool. Calvin, I got 300 words in and I've developed a new Goliath. Ooh, I do love your Goliaths, my friend. I absolutely do love your Goliaths. That's actually really, really cool. Hey, what's up? Rachel in the house. While streaming, grabbing the link. Hope everyone is well. I appreciate you, my friend. Much, much appreciated. Rachel D. Adams, my friends and fellow author tuber, and also a excellent at doing blurbs. Anybody needs help with the blurb for their book, highly recommend Rachel. She is so great. Go check her out over on her YouTube channel. She offers really, really cheap blurb services if you're still trying to figure out what sounds right for that blurb in your book. So highly recommend. And White Sea, you're like, my hero has gone to pick up a paycheck for a tech steel job and has met most of the friendly cast of the story now. He's on his way home to the Elven, Vellemari, district of the city, where he will encounter an old friend teacher who will solidify the hero's feelings of guilt for a job that went bad, and so on to solving the problem. Well, it sounds like you've definitely got a good handle of your plot, and it sounds like you're having a really great time at the part of the story you're on. That's really, really cool. Interesting, Mary. You're like, I'd make it a doll. If she's half a bubble off center, it would be real to her, but the reader wouldn't think it is. Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably right, Mary. Making the doll a doll, not a familiar, making it a doll. I think the only trap I've kind of now put myself into is, since the characters traveled through a village where all these objects were inanimate, the reader has now been predisposed to believe like, oh, okay, this doll could be alive. Um, which, okay, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to have it called out by an external character. I didn't want Scarecrow to call it out to this point. I thought it was too early. I wanted them to build rapport. But I think I'm going to have one of the dragons call it out, one of the dragonkin. Yes, Mary, that's actually a good idea. That is an excellent, yes. I love that. Ooh, like ML Kauffman for the doll. Check on a poppet. Ooh, what is that? Poppet. I mean, it sounds familiar. Poppet. The word poppet has multiple meanings in term of endearment, a valve, a doll, and a support brace. So let's see, a poppet. A small figure of a human being used in sorcery and witchcraft. Interesting. So a poppet in folk magic and witchcraft, a poppet is a doll made to represent a person for casting spells on them or aiding that person through magic. They're occasionally found lodged in chimneys. Okay, so like the poppet is kind of like those like when you see in like movies, like witchcraft type style movies or TV shows, the doll type thing, right? That's kind of what I'm picking up just based on this research, that a poppet is kind of similar to like a hex doll. Because it seems like it's generally used to represent a person to cast spells on them, which is the same style. So it sounds like the poppet comes from British English culture. Um, Interesting. That's actually a really interesting ML. I'm gonna think about that. That's interesting. Yeah, so you're like, it depends on what the doll gets used for. So that is an absolutely great question. So in regards to the first book, the doll is just a doll. Let's see. Is And what's interesting is Calvin kind of picked up on it a little bit, almost like a totem. So in the first book, the doll is just a doll, but it is kind of a totem. It's kind of like it for all intents and purposes, it's kind of the tool that allows her to access her the magic, pebbles magic. So yes, I would say the doll acts as a totem in a sense for the first book, and is nothing more than a totem. So I think a totem is probably a little more accurate. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying as well, Mary. It kind of sounded like a voodoo doll. And I think that would probably push it a little too close. But the doll, it does look nearly identical to Pebbles. So there is something very creepy about it, which is interesting because it kind of does resemble like a voodoo doll or a poppet. And that was very intentionally so, but it is supposed to be a doll. In the first book, anyways. Ooh, White Series. Like you live 20 minutes away from a famous English witch site. Ooh, that's really cool. You must have gone on some really cool adventures before. You must have gone on some really cool, interesting adventures. Ooh, that's so interesting. I'm always so fascinated by witch lore and witchcraft. I know it's witchcraft is also very popular in the media for television shows. There's a lot of like witch-based television shows. Calvin, no poking out people's eyes. Do any characters get their eyes poked out in the first book? I don't think so. I see what I did. Awesome. Hey, what's up, Skull? Always happy to see you here in the live stream, my friend. Welcome. So we just hit the end of this break. So we're going to hop into our second writing sprint. But before we do, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. We're here every day with the ReadNow community, 460 consecutive streams and counting. If you're looking for a daily writing community of all styles of writers, skill levels, if you're looking for writing sprints, author interviews, the critique stream. This Saturday is our next critique show. The ReadNow Book Club, the Faded Fantasy Fiction Contest, or much more. This is the writing community that you want to be a part of. So make sure to tap that follow or subscribe button, and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, my friends. So I'm going to queue up writing sprint number 2. Let's go. Let's see, how am I feeling on time? Let's do 35 minutes. So we'll up the second sprint to 35. I feel pretty good about that. All right. And I think I feel pretty bomb.com. Awesome. And perfect. So let's do it. So we're going to go our second sprint of 35 minutes. I feel pretty good about that. Come join us, and I will come join you in the chat during the sprint. I see a couple of you are still chatting. You can feel free to continue chatting. You can take a break. You can come write with us. Whatever is the vibe. All right. And I think I am all ready. Okay. Perfect. So we got the second sprint on the clock. So whether you are brainstorming, writing, editing, author branding, or maybe you're just procrastinating, come join us because it's time to write now. Writing sprint over. Writing sprint over. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How did that writing sprint treat you? Were you able to make some progress that time? I know I did. I made some more revisionary progress in that part of the story. I actually felt pretty good about that. Were you able to get any words, ideas, thoughts, procrastination, conundrums in that time? I would love to hear. Sounds like we were all actually getting some solid work in. I'm asking myself, I'm actually wondering, I wondering how much. I don't think I have too much of this narrative left. They're about to agree to help each other temporarily. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay, so I still do have a little bit left. I mean, at least what I had originally revised. But I feel like I'm probably going to be able to cut out some of this. So I feel like I'm actually in a pretty good spot. I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to finish this chapter today or not. We'll see. We'll kind of see how the vibe is. So, but yeah, I'm feeling like I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm having so much fun. I was like, all right, you guys have to hear this. This like passage perfectly cracked me up. This like this one like paragraph perfectly like sums up Pebble's personality. It was actually kind of funny. I was cracking myself up. Um, Okay, so I describe the creature. I describe this dragonkin which she encounters. So you guys just tell me if this makes you laugh. For some reason this made me laugh. Flapping before her was a creature nearly twice her size, but that wasn't saying much. Pristine gold scales gleamed in the sunlight, protecting a gray underbelly. Short, frosted silver hair trailed up its spine, leading to a head of hair that only enhanced the creature's curved white horns, pale snout, and sun-fired eyes. This creature could only be described as majestic. Burn that. She wasn't going to say it. What are you supposed to be? A bird? It's like, that's such a Pebble moment. That like cracked me up so much. Oh man, I was like, I wrote that because I was trying to better describe the dragonkin, and I was like, okay, I felt like that worked out pretty good. Oh man, I'm having so much fun. For those of you guys who don't know, when I was working on the original draft, the this chapter was actually one of the chapters that I got so stuck on for like 2 weeks. I was stuck on this chapter. After Scarecrow got captured, I had no clue what I wanted to do with Pebble and Mr. Crow. I knew that I needed to get them to the Coliseum of the Last, but I didn't know how. So I ended up being like, okay, well, what is this chapter missing? Dragons. So I decided to throw in some dragons, and I actually created lore for the dragons in the world. These characters that she's going to be accompanied by for a little while are the dragon kin, who are, of course, the last of their species. They've actually just fled a very, very terrible disease because they actually come from another land. What's interesting though, something I can share about the world building of this world of the lands of the last is that the dragons died out. The dragons are actually extinct and died out a very long time ago. I don't actually think I want dragons specifically in the world, but the dragons died out a very long time ago. Dragonkin are like the last evolution of this species. Essentially, they were able to maintain, they had technology that allowed them to maintain dragon DNA. And the reason they survived was because they kept replicating themselves over time until the dragonkin is what they became through evolution. So I thought that was very, very interesting. I intentionally didn't want to have the dragon specifically. I'm like, dragonkin, like we've kind of heard of them in some lore. I wanted to do a subset of a creature type where I could still kind of play to the dragonkin nature, where I can still play to some dragon tropes without having to adhere to too many mainstream standards. So I thought that was really interesting personally. Okay, let's see. What do we got here? Scroll like Oh man, I know. I wish the chat would show the custom emotes personally, but yeah, I don't know. Hey, what's up, Christina? I saw you hopped in a little while ago during the sprint. So sorry that you're feeling sick, but I'm glad that you're able to kind of. Hopefully, you're at the tail end of it and on the recovery, my friend. Let's see. And then White Seer, I know you're asking for some feedback on, you said on a line. Let's see what you posted. You know, advice on a couple of lines. I know what I wanted to say, but not sure not sure that this says it. So let's see. The Hyper Rail Terminal was an architectural wonder of plasteel and colored glass. The light played with the colors, casting artwork onto the floors of the interior. As people walked around him rushing for work, he couldn't help but notice the carnival-like masks they wore because of it. Okay, so essentially, this paragraph right now is trying to accomplish two things. So what needs to happen is this needs to be split into two separate paragraphs, first off. The first paragraph needs to explain this hyperrail terminal, which is interesting. The hyperrail terminal was an architectural wonder of plasteel and colored glass. The light played with the colors, casting artwork onto the floors in the interior as people walked around him, rushing to work. Because then you're explaining the masks. Now, if the mask, now this is where it comes into a question. If the masks that people are wearing is just part of the world, the backdrop, and they're not important, then you could keep this as one paragraph. If the masks you really want to point the reader to, you want them to paint attention to what these masks look like, and they're going to be important to the main character, then you would do two paragraphs. I would get rid of he couldn't help but notice. That's passive voice, that section. Since we're in the main character's head, the reader already knows that he is noticing. That the reader is already aware that he's going to notice what's happening. So I would frame that as people walked around him rushing for work. Let's see. The light played with the colors, casting artwork onto the floors of the interior. And then I think I would cut there, so that way I let the imagery stand for itself, and then transition to the people. People walked around him rushing for work. Let's see. People rushed by heading for work. Let's see, carnival, like people rushed, because we don't know that they're heading for work, unless it's obvious and it's part of the world building and you've already set it up. Let's see. People rushed in all directions, wearing carnival adorned or donned. People rushed by in all directions, adorned or donning. I think donning. People rushed by donning carnival-like masks. Noticing the carnival, like they wore because of it. So you're saying they wore the carnival mask because they have to go to work. Okay. So people rushed by donning carnival masks for work. People rushed by donning strange, intricately carved carnival masks of description for work. So, I mean, you could go a little bit into description if you want the reader to know about the carnival masks. And then once you do that setup, the paragraph setup, then the next paragraph would be how he's feeling about it or the action that's happening to the hero. I think that's how I would touch upon it, White Seer. Hope that helps out a little bit. Nice. That's awesome that you hit 1,000 words tonight. Congrats, my friend. Sounds like you're making some solid progress with me. I'm like really happy at the progress we're making today. Especially like since I haven't written the past couple of days, because our weekend streams are usually we usually don't get to do writing sprints on all the weekend streams. I'm always so happy when I get to start into my writing for the week. Nice, Calvin. That is so dope. More words now leading up to another mock Goliath. Your Goliath battles are so cool, by the way. I'm like, that's actually really, really cool, my friend. Goliath battles are fire. Maddie, you've just been making noises into your OBS, microphone OBS the last 30 minutes. The light from the ceiling is almost painting masks upon their face rather than the wearing actual. Okay, so they're not wearing actual masks. It's just a light. Okay, so then if they're not wearing actual masks, then you need to clarify. Okay, so you're using like masks as like a, yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying. is people walked around him as people rushed. Let's see. It says people rushed by. So the people would be the last subject then. This would go, the light played with the colors, casting artwork onto the floors of the interior. The light played with colors, casting artwork. The light played with the colors, casting artwork onto the floors in the interior, and creating mask-like reflections of light against its citizens, against people as they rushed by. I think I would do something like that. Because it's going to cast light, so you're going to need another word for casting the light. And you've already used the light played with the colors casting, so maybe find another alternative word for casting. But I would do something like that, and then referencing how the mirror or the exterior is creating that light source and it's projecting it onto the people. That's an interesting one, where it's like rushing around for work, the rainbow colors created carnival masks on each member of the throng. Rushing around, the rainbow colors created carnival masks. I still think, though, that could potentially be confusing. The rainbow colors created carnival masks on each member of the throng. Then I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like? First off, I don't even know what a carnival mask is. Then I think of like, okay, well, a carnival is like a clown. So I was like, is everyone like, does it look like they're wearing clown masks? So I think you would have to clarify carnival. I almost wonder if there's a better way to describe it. Although, because if you say carnival, the reader might assume, okay, they're all wearing clown masks. Painting masks. That's actually that's a good one. I think that could work well. Awesome, 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 my friends. So before we hop into the next writing sprint, let's do a quick call out to the Story and Critique stream. This Saturday is the next episode of the Story and Critique stream. Make sure to submit now. If you want a live reading and a live critique, it's absolutely free. All you have to do is submit an excerpt of your story to the Google Doc form. It's linked down in the YouTube description, but I'll also drop it down in the chat for anybody who hasn't submitted already for our next story and critique stream, which is going to be this coming Saturday. The Story and Critique stream is always everybody's favorite stream. I always love getting all the feedback from everybody. It's going to be a great experience. So definitely make sure to submit now if you want feedback on your story. And then just so you're aware, I'm going to be traveling out of the studio for the rest of the week. So it does mean that our critique show on Saturday is going to be a little shorter than normal, which means the sooner you submit, the more likely you are to be able to get feedback on your story for this Saturday's stream. So make sure to submit now. All right, beautiful. And let's hop back into it. I'm going to try to finish up this next. Yeah, I'm going to really try to finish up, see if I can get through the rest of this chapter. We'll see. Let's push our last sprint to 45 minutes. If I'm near the end, I might push it into a free write. We'll see. But I think 45 minutes feels good. So let me set this here. We will go 45 minutes for our last sprint. Awesome. And I think I am all ready. So let's get into it. Sprint number 3 will be 45 minutes. And I think I am all ready. So whether you are brainstorming, writing, editing, revising, branding, procrastinating, or maybe just listening to the music, come join us because it's time to write now. All right, writing sprint done. Writing sprint complete. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How did that writing sprint treat you? Were you able to make any progress that time? I feel like I was able to make some solid progress. Was I able to finish? I got pretty close to finishing the chapter. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I definitely made some great progress. What did you get? So we did about an hour and a half of sprinting, which was great. And let's see, I made it through a good portion of this. And let's see, how much did I get? Okay, so I did about 1,500 words overall. So I feel pretty good. That was about 1,500 revised. I'm pretty happy with how that chapter is evolving. Almost done, so I'm pretty close to it. So yeah, but I know we've had a lot of solid progress today. I hope you were able to make some progress as well. So, but on that note, with 3 writing sprints out of the way, and before we wrap up, I want to do a quick call out to the Read Now book club. So April is today. Today is the first official day of the Read Now book club. The book that we are reading with the community is, I was like, nope, that is not what I want. The book that we are reading, that you chose, that you selected, my friends, was Mythic Shadow of the Spark by Adrian Santiago. So it is now free to get. It's now free to purchase from Amazon. You can go to the Amazon link and purchase it for free. So you can join us for the month of April as we read Mythic Shadow of the Spark by Adrian Santiago, our very own co-host. As you guys voted on, we'll be interviewing Adrian in just a couple weeks about his journey and process in creating this book. And so far, the reviews are looking pretty good. We've gotten pretty good feedback from the community. And then we'll come together with the other co-hosts at the end of the month to chat about and discuss the book in a live discussion. So make sure to come join us. Go pick up a copy now. It's going to be free for the month of April, so everybody can read it. We can all come together and share our thoughts. Sci-fi, going from paranormal fantasy in March to science fiction in April. So I'm very stoked, and I hope you are as well, my friends. And on that note, as we hit creative writing on the morrow, I'll be back tomorrow with the Write Now Writers Group. 4 p.m. Pacific, 5, 6, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll be here as we're joined by other writers in the community to chat up writing, maybe get some writing in, and see just what's on our minds. If you want to come join the writers group, we meet every week. Tomorrow is our, I want to say 40, is our 40th meeting. Tomorrow is our 40th meeting. If you want to come hop on stream with us and come talk with the other writers and get some writing in, drop a comment or shoot me an email or a message and let me know, and I'll include you on the invite. So we'll be back with the Right Now Writers Group. And most importantly, if you enjoyed the stream, tap that like button on your way out. Help us show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. All right, my friends, it's been great. I can see you guys got some awesome progress as well. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.
Right now.
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 Because it's time to